Welcome to part 2 of my Hxtal demo of how I use Hxtal in the capacity of repairing glass and ceramic objects. There will be more things that I can add on the subject that aren't in this video or the previous one because they haven't occurred so that I could film them yet. But when I do, I will add them to this knowledge base. So anyway, enjoy this other half of this presentation, and I hope you find it helpful. Alright, so I've just taken this object out of the hot box. I had it heated, and I want to show you how we treat this with Hxtal. So as you can see, I have Hxtal mixed here, and I'm using a glass rod, and I'm putting it right on the crack lines on the outside. And this crack goes all the way down the side. I'm not going to go there because I don't want the Hxtal running all over the place. I can always add more later. But as you can see, hopefully, these crack lines will begin to disappear as this Hxtal penetrates. And in this case right here, you can see it happening. As soon as I put it in there, it goes right in. And that line, that crack line, hopefully will disappear. So I don't want to go too far around the side, otherwise this will just run down the side and I'll end up gluing the jug to the inside of my hot box. So this will go right back in the hot box as soon as I put this Hxtal on here. I can see these lines disappearing already, some of them. All right, so this will take multiple applications, and that's all we're going to do for the moment. I'm going to put this in the hot box. That'll help this become less thick and penetrate further and quicker into these crack lines. And then after about 5 or 10 minutes, we'll take it out, wipe it off. As I can see right now, there's a bit of it running down the side here. That's not going to do anything, so I might as well just wipe it off. Too much Hxtal is not a good thing. I can see where it's running down the sides here. Alright, so we'll revisit this shortly. I'll check it in about 10 or 15 minutes. So I need to wipe off the Hxtal. I've taken this out of the hot box. It's been in there for about 10 minutes. And I'm going to wipe off the excess. I have my pre-cut paper towel squares. First thing I do is wipe off the drips to get the bulk of it. This will leave a film that still has to be wiped off. I got all the crack lines that I applied Hxtal to. And as hopefully, as you can see, those lines disappeared wherever I put my Hxtal. And so then I want to wipe this with alcohol, and you don't want to get it soaking wet, just damp, because you don't want the alcohol to, you don't want it to be wet enough for alcohol to go into the crack. You just want to wipe off this film of Hxtal. Some of that Hxtal went underneath this tape, and we'll scrape that off with a razor blade in a couple days. So as you could see, this line, this line, this line, this line almost pretty much disappeared. And my Hxtal's in there. So now I want to address these other cracks. With the same technique, basically. You just put some Hxtal right on the crack. Tilt this a little more. I can feel the edge of the crack with my rod. Once I put the Hxtal on there, sometimes it disappears and I can't find it. What I want to do is tilt this so the Hxtal runs into the crack. Okay, it's going to go back in the hot box, and then we'll take it out. I have some more cracks on this side. We'll come back and do those in a bit. So now I'm on the other side. I've taken this out of the hot box and wiped off what we just did a minute ago, and I may have failed to mention the temperature of the hot box is about 150 degrees. So it's not so hot that I can't pick the objects up. I don't know if that's going to go in there. We'll see. Turn this a little bit. Try to get gravity to work with me here while I have this out. Now this crack doesn't come to the surface. It's cracked from the inside, so I'm hoping this will get underneath there. Well, I think we're going to let that go for the moment. Put her back in the hot box and let the heat do the work for me. So I've had this in the hot box overnight at 150 degrees. Well, I turn it off at night and I leave it on in the daytime. So I turned it on this morning at 150 again. It's pretty warm right now. I mean, but I can pick it up and just barely handle it. So we got most of that. Those cracks are completely gone. So when I put this Hxtal on here yesterday and we had the tape on it, what happens is it runs up against the tape and then it goes underneath it. And sometimes it goes down the crack and comes up underneath the tape. And there's nothing you can do about it. But so the next day I come back and I take a razor blade and scrape that off. Cleans it right up. And then I'll take some acetone on a paper towel square and wipe those off. So I'm going to chase down all these little places where the Hxtal went under the tape. Scrape it off the glass. I have paper towel squares and some acetone. And I'll just wipe down that whole area and get off any residue and runs and fingerprints. Alright, so I have the hole left here, missing material in it, and I have a piece of tape on the inside, masking tape. That's going to stay there, and this is a couple days old, this Hxtal. As you can see, it's kind of about the consistency of honey. And now I'm going to just let this has been in the hot box. It's a little bit warm right now, and that will self-level. Kind of overfill it. That will self-level. And I will put this in the hot box. Hopefully that will be solid again tomorrow, and I might put a little bit more on there so we can file it down level and even. I'll polish it up. Fill the hole. So it's the next day, and yesterday I overfilled this hole so I can file this down flush with the surface, and it's hard now. So I'm just going to take a file. It's a steel file, and if I'm careful I won't scratch this. So I'm just going to plane this down flat with the surface, and then we'll polish it with micro mesh. Just take your time if you do this, and try not to catch the edge of one of your cracks, and you should be fine. We just keep doing this until we get it flat. You can probably see that a little better now that it's scuffed up a bit. Alright, so I've planed it down. I'm hoping you can see that scuff mark there. And now I'm going to just take micro mesh abrasive papers. This is actually a canvas kind of backing on here. And so we're going to go from 2400 through 32, 4,000, or 3,200, 4,000, 6,000, 8,000, 12,000. All right. So I'm going to start with 2,400. I'm going to take a moment or two. I'm going to take the file marks out of that. Okay, that's 2,400. We're going 3,200. By the way, I date these so I know how old the paper is when I'm working with it. Usually I don't need the date. I can tell by whether it's working or not. But as you can see, it's going to start getting clearer. And we go to 4,000. And now it's really starting to get clear and a bit of a polish to it. It doesn't take a long time to do this, actually. Here's my 6,000. $8,000. And finally, $12,000. All right, very shiny. Now there's a little bit of sanding dust that got caught in some of the cracks and things here that we'll wipe that out in a moment. All right, so I'm just going to wipe this with alcohol on a Q-tip, and I got all the dust out of these cracks. The sanding dust. And now I'm going to polish that a little bit more. The alcohol dulled it a bit. I'm going to go back to 8,000 and polish that. And the 12,000. So I'm hoping you can see that it's shiny as glass right now. There's no color on there, but nothing we can do about that. So that's a use of Hxtal just to do a fill. There's no bonding. It's not holding anything together. It's simply filling a hole where there was missing material. All right, so we're still filling this glass platter, and bonded it together. I filled a spot over here I'm still working on, but I want to show you how we fill these other areas too. Now I have Hxtal here that's a couple days old. It's still very runny, and I've just taken this platter out of the hot box. It's about 150 degrees right now, and I'm just overfilling these chips so that I can sand them, file them down. And we'll wait a few minutes here. It might need another application. I have some more over here, but I don't want it to run. I've got an edge here. I don't want it to run. I'm hoping it'll just stay in the pit. And then I'll put this right back out in the hot box. Okay, so I'm hoping you can see these welts where they're overfilled and sitting proud of the surface. Hopefully it's hard to see, but there's a bit of a welt there, and that's what I'm looking for. I want this to be higher and overfill the crack so I can file it down level. So I've overfilled these with Hxtal, and now it's hard, and I just want to take a file and file it down to the level of the surface. Can you see that? Move over to this one. And so here it's filed down smooth, and now I need to wipe it a little bit with acetone. So I have acetone, I have a little paper towel, and then I just wipe over this area. And it pretty much blends right in. Yeah, I know it's difficult to see what's going on here, but I've wiped off all the excess residue. We've filed down any of the overfill, and now I'm just taking a piece of micro mesh, and I'll go over that and further scuff it and take any parts that are shiny and make it dull so that it looks like the frosted back of this. And that'll further help blend this, the fills into the existing frosted background. Alright, so I want to show you a different technique with Hxtal today. And so Hxtal takes 5 to 7 days to fully cure. And normally if you put it on things and you don't do any kind of acceleration of the curing, you could probably pick the object up after and handle it after about 2 or 3 days. And you might even be able to move the stuff around again. It all depends on the humidity and temperature in the ambient environment. But this is a way to what we call accelerate the curing of this Hxtal. So I've mixed up a batch of it here, And this is my standard mix is in one of these little 10cc laboratory beakers, and it's, let's see, the mix is 3-to-1, so it's 9/10 of a gram of part A and 3/10 of a gram of part B, and are mixed, and so this is about how much you get. Can you see the level of that? And but I want to accelerate this because I only need a little bit of it, but I want to accelerate it because I need to put it on something where I don't want it to run. It's going to be on a piece of glass that has a compound curve on it, and I don't want this to run down the curve and run out of the thing I'm trying to glue. So what I've done is I made some a condiment dish full of, or partially filled with warm water that I've just from the tap, just as hot as I could get my water out of my tap. It's probably about 120 degrees, and so we just put it in the bath of this water and let it sit, and I stir it so that you will see that it is suddenly warmer and less thick already as the heat makes this more runny. The heat will eventually thicken it over time. So what you do, the process of doing that is, once you know the consistency that you need it to be, how thick you want it to be, you put it in this bath and you'll sit it next to you while you're working. So you can go to it every few minutes and stir it and see what the thickness is. You might even have to replenish this hot water a couple of times. It all depends on how thick you need it to get. So I'll just sit this here. Let me lift it up so you can see. See how watery that is all of a sudden? And just because I put it in this warm water. So this will actually thicken it, and we'll come back here every few minutes and show it getting thicker. It's been about 3 minutes. This is already starting to get thick. It's been about 3 minutes, and this water is already cold. So I'm going to quickly warm it up with some fresh tap water. And the reason I use glass rods is because using a metal can contaminate this this epoxy mix. It's a special epoxy where they've actually removed all the metals from it so that it won't turn color on you later when it cures. So metal is not a good thing to use to stir this. I also don't use wood because it's porous and who knows what kind of acids or whatever is in the wood. So I use glass. You could use plastic too. It would keep you out of trouble. Alright, so it's been 20 minutes roughly, and every 5 minutes this gets cold and I recharge it with more warm water. So I've done that 4 times, so it's been 20 minutes. And just to give you an idea, it's cold again now. So here's an idea of how thick it's gotten. It's starting to thicken. And it may be hard to tell, but it is starting to thicken. And I don't want to stir it too much. I don't want to introduce bubbles into this. So I'm going to recharge this with warm water again, and I'll probably have to do this 2 or 3 more times, maybe 4. Again, we just go until it's the right consistency. This is still a little bit warm, barely. When it cools to room temperature, it will be as thick as it's going to be with this heating. So we're going to go back into it. I just wanted to give you a look at what it's looking like so far. I'm guessing we're about halfway through getting this to the thickness I need it. Alright, I've had this in the hot water for a while now, and it is, let's see if you can see it on the side there. It's pretty thick now. It's kind of like honey, which is about what I wanted. I don't want to stir it because I'll get bubbles in it. So let's go show it being used. Okay, can you see that? Mm-hmm. Alright, so you can see this is very thick now. And I'm hoping it's thick enough. I'm trying to work with it without getting any bubbles in it. And I've scuffed up this glass with a diamond file. I tried to glue it before, and the glue just let go. It didn't like gripping to a slick, smooth surface. So I'm putting my Hxtal right on top of this scuffed area. And I want it to just stay there like that, see? And now, can you see this? So this is the scuffed up area. Used a diamond file on that. And so now I need to line up this ear with the other one that I glued on last week. So we'll slip it in here. And now I need to gauge where my, pardon my head being in the way. And so this is modeling clay. I don't need it to stick, I just need it to rest against here. Just enough to keep it from falling or moving. So now I need to check my alignment. I need to go higher. Okay, I finally got into position here, and as you can see, right between this and this is where my Hxtal is, and it's practically invisible right now. All the bubbles have gone out of it, and I got just the right amount of the Hxtal in there so that it fills that scuffed strip on both pieces, and it's gone all the way to the ends of where this is touching, where the ear is touching the head. And so it's as perfect as I could get this. And I've also checked my alignment for this orientation, this orientation, this orientation, and also this way. So all those have to match up with the other ear suspended below here. That's the chore here. So now I just have to leave it in the sandbox propped here like this with my modeling clay just resting on there, touching it. It's not really stuck to it, it's just holding it in place to keep it from falling. So I just leave this here undisturbed for 2 or 3 days, and it should be fine. And I need to check it. If you do this sort of thing, you need to check this often, every half hour or so for the first day, just to make sure that nothing shifted. It can happen for many reasons. If this will settle on the sandbag, or if somebody bumped the table and you didn't know about it, or where I live in earthquake country, you'd have little tremors that could just shake just enough, you might not even feel it, but it's enough to make things settle and change the orientation of how this is sitting, and gravity will change this on you. So you need to keep checking it pretty much the rest of the day once you've done this sort of thing. So we'll come back later and look at it when I take the props off of here, and we'll clean up the greasy marks it leaves and call the client when it's done. Alright, so here's how thick my Hxtal is now. I don't want to stir this. I mean, it's pretty darn thick. It's like a little thicker than honey. Now this is still usable, and I'm going to use it today on something else. I've pretty much spread it on by hand instead of, it's not going to wick into any cracks, but it's usable. It's still a good adhesive. I'll use it on something else today, and then the remainder of this I will put a saran wrap over the top. Take my stir stick out of here, put saran wrap over the top, and put this in the freezer, and it'll be good for another couple days.